Welcome to the Psychology World podcast. I'm Connor Whiteley, bringing you psychology news, articles, and other interesting psychology-related articles. Where I can find the podcast notes and more interesting psychology-related things, and you can get your free 8 psychology book box set at connorwhiteley.net. Now let's get on to the show. Hello everyone, and welcome to episode 58 of the Psychology World podcast with me, Connor Whiteley. And today's episode is on 3 reasons why we experience boredom in relationships. Yes, this episode I think is really interesting. And after the past 3 episodes, which have been a bit dense with various topics like formulation, clinical psychology, this is a sort of like palate cleanser. Moving on to psychology news section. So we're in from the British Psychological Society Research Digest. So, a new take on the marshmallow test. Children wait longer for a treat when their reputation is at stake. Because I've heard of this one recently in my child development ones. It was one of the few moments that actually made me perk up. Okay, so most people, even the non-psychologists among us, have at some point heard of the legendary marshmallow test, which measures the ability of a preschool children to wait for a sweet treat. Researchers have found that the amount of time children are willing to wait for their marshmallow is surprisingly predictive of various life outcomes, such as educational attainment during adolescence, as well as social competence and resilience to stress throughout development. Interesting. A recent fMRI brain scan study, that measures brain activity and blood flow in the brain. So it found that even people's performance as a kid is related to their ability to suppress their impulses and is reflected in neurological signatures of cognitive control 40 years later. The test is currently tapping into something crucial that shapes children's future to a considerable degree. But what exactly is it? Does the test capture an ability that is akin to intelligence or intrinsic cognitive control, or might performance be a mark of some other underlying factor, such as the privilege of living in a supportive home where children can develop the trust capacity that enables them to wait for a reward? The list of potential explanations is long, and now it has received a surprising new addition from a study that finds that children can rapidly improve their performance on the marshmallow test if they believe their social representation might be at stake. This I think is really interesting because the marshmallow test is quite an infamous study, and I just think it's really interesting to see how even the most legendary tests can still be redone, and it can also just be added to. Yes, and that's the great thing about psychology, is that we're constantly learning, we're constantly adding to new exciting things. Yes, this I think is really interesting. Okay, so another one. After cheating on a test, people claim to have known the answer anyway. So cheating is common, ranging from, I think there's a typo in this email, from beginning instances like looking for an answer on a phone during a pub quiz to fairly major, such as using a series of coughs to fraudulently bag yourself £1 million on a popular TV game show. Because I think that was the TV show in Britain 2 months ago, I think. I forget what it's called now. But wherever we fall on the scale, research suggests we're still likely to think of ourselves as honest and trustworthy. And that I think is just human nature, because nobody likes to consider themselves as a bad person. So there's something of a tension here. We're seemingly both prone to teaching and convinced ourselves of our own integrity. But a new study has an explanation for this apparent contradiction. When we cheat, we claim we knew the answer all along, which I think is one of the most weirdest things, because I can definitely see this happening in real life, and to be honest, I think we've all been around people who have cheated and then they're like, but I knew that anyway. And as a bystander, you're there and you're thinking, well, if you know it, why did you need to cheat in the first place? And come on, I think we've all done it ourselves at one time or another. So I'm going to do one more. The editor's pick. Low levels of daylight make cool temperatures feel even more uncomfortable. If you're living in the UK, your clocks will be going back this hour. Thank you, British Psychological Society. I had no idea that the clocks went back this weekend. I thought it was next weekend. So thank you for that, if anyone's listening. Right, okay. So it's a good time to revise this story from the same time last year. This Sunday marks the official end of British summertime. Once the clocks go back, it will of course begin to get darker even earlier in the afternoon. In the afternoon? Come on, I think that's a bit of a stretch. I think it might start getting dark about 7 o'clock now. In 2019, a study suggests that if you find yourself feeling uncomfortably cold as you head home from work through a dimmer light, the light change itself could have something to do with it. The study shows that for the first time, that levels of daylight can affect our perception of the temperature. And this I think, this I think is like completely true, because I know that I'm personally quite surprised when it's really like sunny and it's actually really like cold out there, because for the past like few days it's been really sunny outside, but it's not been cold, so I've not been like surprised by anything. Granted, it's not shorts and t-shirt weather, but I don't know, it's actually been quite close to it. Yes, so that's just like something like interesting. Yes, I hope you've enjoyed the psychology news section. Let's move on to the personal update. So moving on to the personal update. Yes, it's going to be like quite a quick personal update, because there's actually not a lot to say, because even though this week's been really busy with a university and pretty much all I seem to be doing is university stuff, there's actually nothing exciting to tell you, because I could tell you about my essay and I don't know, like the doubts surrounding around that, because the information's enough. I'm just not sure that my essay structures are very much there. Like I could tell you about that, but again, that's not fun, that's not interesting. Yes, like in terms of university stuff, like there's absolutely nothing interesting. Like, yeah, the only other possible relevant thing I'd like to tell you is that you might have to wait a bit longer to be able to order my books, but like my print books from your local bookstores and your local libraries, because I'm having massive technical issues trying to sort it all out and everything, and it's just like some stuff really easy to set stuff up. This really difficult, and I'm having to contact a lot of my author friends for help. Okay, that's like it for like this week. So yeah, but next week is my reading week off university, so I am having a week off. I'm not doing anything to do with university like next week. So in terms of like psychology, that means absolutely nothing. But I've got tons of fiction work like to do, because I'm continuing with Girl Like Book 9. I've been slowly chipping away at that. So I've done one chapter this week, and I did quite a few last week, and it's just been like small stuff like that. But next week I will be finalising the interview questions for our very special guest, and yes, and the interview I'm really looking forward to. I've always wanted to talk to this author, so as I've said before, I'm interviewing her on the 9th of November. Yes, and then the interview should come out on the following Monday, hopefully, which I really can't see why it will be able Yes, I really can't see why it wouldn't. And to be honest, it's just tons of fiction stuff I'm what I'm going through at the moment. But as I'm launching my author podcast next week or the week after, I'm going to save all of my author talk and all of my fiction talk for that podcast. And as always, I always love to know your thoughts and feelings on today's episode. Yes, you can always email me, connorwhiteley@connorwhiteley.net. You can always leave a comment on the show notes at connorwhiteley.net, or you can always tweet me on Twitter at sci-fi_whiteley. And the highlighted product for today's episode is my biological psychology book, 2nd edition. Here's the blurb. Do you want to know how our biology can impact our behaviour? Have you ever wondered the importance of sleep and the meaning of dreams? Do you want to learn how and why we experience the senses we do? If the answer is yes to any of these questions and more, then this is the book for you, as you'll learn a lot of great information about biological psychology and how our biology impacts our behaviour, all explained in an interesting and easy to understand way. By the end of this book, you will learn what is biological psychology, how evolution, hormones and neurotransmitters affect our behaviour, and how our biology affects our behaviour, and much more. By today, start learning about this fascinating topic of biological psychology. Yes, I really enjoy this book, because it goes into the history of psychology, localization of the brain, evolution, genetics, like I said, and it goes into so much more. As always, it's always explained in an interesting and easy to understand way. Yes, that's a biological psychology 2nd edition, available on all major ebook retailers like Amazon, Kobo, Google Play, Barnes & Noble, and many more. And you can always get the ebook for free at your local library. Then you can get the paperback and large print edition on Amazon. That's enough for the personal update. Let's move on to the content part of today's episode. So moving on to the content part of today's episode. So we're going to be looking at 3 reasons of why people experience boredom in a relationship and how to overcome it. Yes, even though I've never been in a relationship, Yes, I know, very sad story. Yes, this should be a great episode, and hopefully you'll find it useful. And as I said in the news section, again, this is a palate cleanser from all the rather hardcore psychology episodes that we've had in the past few episodes, like formulation and clinical psychology, and also the should a psychologist be able to prescribe drugs, which I had no idea was so popular. Like, I looked at the podcast stats and I was thinking, and I was just thinking, wow, I never expected it to be like that high. Yes, as always, thank you so much for listening. I really do appreciate it. Okay, so we're moving on to the reasons. So the first reason why people can experience boredom in a relationship is that because our brains naturally adjust to exciting changes over time. So what happens here is that as we're getting into a new relationship, it's exciting, there's lots of passion, and because of this, our brain releases tons of neurochemicals, whether this is hormones or neurotransmitters, and over time, our brain builds up a tolerance to this, meaning that over time, we don't really respond the same way to this burst of hormones and neurotransmitters. To be honest, I like to think of this like addiction, because I think it's the easiest parallel. When I put in addiction, you do the drug or whatever first, then you get a great buzz, then the brain builds up a tolerance, and then you need even more of it to get the same buzz, and that you can sort of do in a relationship. Basically, you can draw a really weird parallel, but basically the brain builds up a tolerance over time, and this is natural and it's not a bad thing. So the solution for this is that you need to consider why we're grateful for the relationship in the first place, because not everything is about sex or basically not everything is about the neurochemical reactions. Sometimes it's just about being with someone, having a laugh with someone, and just appreciating them, and basically just stuff like that. Okay, so the next reason is lack of novelty. And to be honest, when I was watching the blog poster for this, I put in a really weird example, because I was going to talk about quite a personal story, but I was thinking, no, I don't want to go that personal, because I love sharing with all of you, but sometimes there's a line. Yes, but the great thing about relationships is that it's new and exciting, and that's what we all love about them. Whether this is friendships or sexual relationships, this new, exciting, we can always explore more, and I think quite like that. But after a while, it gets a bit samey. The really weird example that I put in the blog post for this, I started to do my own audiobooks in July 2019, and I loved it. I love audio, as you know, and I thought it was so magical. I thought audio was brilliant and everything. But as I started to do more and more audio, for example, for this podcast and for more audiobooks, I still love audio. But the problem with it is that it sort of loses its magic, because it's the same thing. I don't know how to describe it, but basically it's like a relationship, because unless you keep stuff fresh, then it does tend to get a bit samey. Okay, that's another reason why I go online and I find these articles, and then I create podcast episodes, and then I use those original articles as evidence and etc. for it, because it keeps stuff fresh, and that's the best thing you can do. Yes, for example, if you and your friends, there's nothing new going on, and it's starting to get a bit boring, mix it up a bit, keep stuff fresh. I don't know, go out for dinner, go around each other's houses out of the blue, and just try and add a bit more spontaneity to it. And the same goes for sexual relationships. Yes, so if you, your girlfriend, boyfriend, etc., things are the same, then spice stuff up, as they say. Just try and keep stuff fresh, is what I'm trying to say. And yes, I really am trying to keep this quite PG and quite E-rated. Today's episode. The last reason why people experience boredom in a relationship is because of lack of intimacy. Now, this does not mean necessarily sexual intimacy, but from what I hear, it's very important to try and keep that up. Don't just not do it for 6 months, because apparently that kills it. But I think it's not down to sexual intimacy, because intimacy can also be psychological intimacy. Yes, you're also talking to people, and this tends to be a lot more, yes, it is a lot more relatable friendships, because you should be able to have a psychological closeness, and this is a sense of trust a sense that you can just talk to people, a sense that you can like share secrets and everything. Like psychological intimacy is really, really important. Yes, like if you like have a lack of that, then that's why friendships tend to like drift apart and like everything. Yes, so like meaning that the solution for this one is like set a time each week, and this tip is more for sexual partners. Yes, like set a time each week which you just connect. You don't do anything else, and you do this thing called talking. I know, gosh, who talks anymore? Yes, like you would just like sit there with your girlfriend, boyfriend, wife, husband, like etc., and you just talk about their day, what's been happening in their lives, and you just connect. And that's all you do. No Facebooks, no emails, no work, nothing. And yes, I know it's hard because we've all got busy lives, but just set aside an hour, 2 hours, an evening, ideally, and then you just talk, reconnect, because that's really important to get psychological intimacy. But I hope that you've really enjoyed like today's episode. As always, tell me your thoughts by email, Twitter, or you're working on like leave a comment on the show notes. Please check out Biological Psychology 2nd edition, and have a great day, everyone. And I'll see you next time. Thanks for listening today. I hope you enjoyed it. If you want to see the show notes, then please go to connorwhiteley.net. And if you want a free 8-book psychology box set, then please go to connorwhiteley.net. Have a great day, and I'll see you next time.